everybody. Coach William Grazione here, owner of Metabolic Evolution Incorporated, where we're bringing you the latest evidence-based nutritional advice to help you master your metabolism. In this video, we're going to be talking to you guys all about insulin resistance. So if you happen to be somebody who is overweight, you're possibly inactive and eating too many carbohydrates, and you're not sure how to get your fasted blood sugar down, this video is going to be for you. So it's no surprise that in our world, a lot of people right now are currently overweight. And it's to no surprise because a lot of people are just very inactive, they're very sedentary, and they're just not consuming the right type of nutrients, specifically over-consuming carbohydrates. Now, if we take a look at this, the carbohydrates and the inactivity are what's causing the insulin resistance. Now, what specific ranges are considered insulin resistant? So usually 100 and under is considered normal for fasted blood sugar. Now there are some different variable cofactors that may play a role there. As an example, if you have genetically high blood sugar naturally because the majority of your family may be pre-diabetic or type 2 insulin diabetic, then you would probably be registering in the low 100s regardless. I actually happen to fall in that category as well. Now, if you happen to be somebody who may be pre-diabetic, then we're looking at a range from about 100 all the way up to 130, potentially 140. Now, where type 2 insulin diabetes actually comes in, type 2 diabetes comes in, is anywhere from 140 all the way up to 200. Now, if you happen to be within this 140 to 200 range, this video is going to be for you. The context of this video is going to be specifically for you to help you learn how to finally gain control over your blood sugar. All right, so I'm going to tell you guys a little story about myself. My whole family, besides myself, is overweight. Okay, now growing up, I watched my grandmother stick the needle in herself, take a handful of pills every day, and for her, I just thought because of her age, that was normal. However, as I was going through my university studies, quickly realizing that a lot of people were overweight just because of their overaccumulation of eating excessive amounts of glucose and their inactivity, you start to connect the dots over time, and then you realize that maybe this could be improved with food. So now I'm in the understanding, and I believe that food is medicine because I've actually firsthand taken that advice and utilized it within members of my family. So I'm going to tell you guys a story about my mother, a very quick story about my mom and how she was a type 2 insulin diabetic, just like my grandmother was. And then we ultimately got her to a place where now she's no longer type 2 diabetic and doesn't need to take any medications. So for, I would say, probably 5 to 7 years, my mother was a type 2 insulin diabetic. And again, the same vicious cycle I watched play out with my grandmother, I watched it play out with my mom. Needle, insulin, how much insulin, metformin, all of the capsules that, all of the medications that the physicians are prescribing to be able to regulate blood sugar. She was taking them. And I at this point in time was already involved as a nutrition coach for about 5 years, I think. And one day she drove up to come see me at my home and was like, "Bill, I'm deciding I think I'm going to try a ketogenic diet." And I said, "Mom, I think that would be phenomenal for you," because she's very sedentary. She's been working at a desk for the last 30 years, and she doesn't really exercise very much. So figured ketogenic diet for her would be phenomenal. However, I had to be very clear with her, and I had to explain to her that doing a ketogenic diet can be very beneficial for the short term for her specifically, because all she was trying to do was get her fasted blood sugar down. And I eventually told her that it's the caloric deficit that's really helping you improve your fasted blood sugar. However, what I would highly recommend you do is once you lose the amount of weight that you're desiring to lose, it would be a phenomenal idea if you started to implement some carbohydrates back into your diet, say maybe having a 24-hour refeed every week. And that's exactly what she did. She started a ketogenic diet where she, predominantly ate food such as a lot of vegetables, bacon, eggs, proteins, and things like this, high-fat diet. And what eventually happened was that she eventually got to the point where now she's down about 65 pounds. I think it had been about 8 or 9 months of her kind of going back, seeing her physician, and every single time her physician's like, "Man, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's amazing." And now she doesn't need insulin. She doesn't need metformin. She doesn't need anything because she regulates her blood sugar with her amount of carbohydrates. So if she's going to be active, she has some carbohydrates. And then once a week, she has a 24-hour refeed day where she does have more carbohydrates coming by way of either oatmeals, pastas, potato, rice, whatever kind of carbohydrates she wants. And she's been able to regulate her blood sugar perfectly ever since then. So that's the story, is that you can basically use food as medicine. You can improve your own insulin resistance simply by the way that you eat. All right, so how do you actually improve your fasted blood sugar? Two specific things. One of them is going to be exercise, okay? Anytime your body is moving, anytime muscles are contracting, you are burning calories, you are expending ATP, you are utilizing glucose. Specifically, if you're doing resistance training, because resistance training is glycolytic exercise, you'll likely be able to burn through glucose at a faster rate if you're resistance training. However, if you are a very sedentary individual, I would highly recommend just getting up, going outside, and just walking for 15 to 20, half an hour a day. Just go for that walk. Get yourself some mental clarity. Get yourself back into the position of being a physically active human being where you actually identify as being somebody who takes walks every day. That's going to be the first thing you can do to help you improve your insulin resistance. The second thing is going to be nutrition related. So a lot of individuals will say, oh, I can't go on a ketogenic diet because for me, I need to eat carbohydrates. I just have a craving for carbohydrates. Keep in mind that I am recommending a ketogenic diet for probably the first couple of weeks to a month of you trying to improve insulin resistance. However, that does not mean you stay on keto forever. That does not mean you can't have carbohydrates forever. It's simply just a short-term fix to improve your health markers so that you can actually start to include carbohydrates back into your diet at a time in place where now both your muscle tissue and your fat tissue are actually more receptive of glucose. Because right now, being in an insulin resistant state, what's happening is that your insulin is basically just staying elevated, and whenever you eat carbohydrates, they're not being absorbed, they're not being utilized, they're just being stored. Okay, so basically what we have to do, and this is what I call the 2-cup theory, is that when you are in an insulin sensitive state, right, and you start to overaccumulate, start to overeat glucose, what happens is that your lean muscle tissue is receptive of the glucose and it sucks it in, it uses it for fuel. However, eventually over the course of time, that will fill up. Now, when your muscle tissue fills up, then that glucose will then be shuttled into your fat tissue, okay? Now, once your fat tissue fills up, then you're in trouble, okay? So what we have to think about doing is we have to think about clearing the glucose out of these 2 cups. We got to think about utilizing any overage, any spillage. Use all that glucose, get those cups down low so that then you can start to implement carbohydrate back in when you are more insulin sensitive. Now, this does not happen overnight. It will take you probably at least 2, 3, 4 weeks to improve your blood sugar, but it will be 100% worth it. I can guarantee you that. I believe for my mother, it took her about a month and a half to 2 months to actually, and within that month and a half to 2 months, I think she had already lost like over 15 pounds, right? So the caloric deficit was helping her, but she was able to achieve that glucose resensitization faster because she wasn't eating glucose every single day. So a lot of people will say, well, Will, all you have to do is establish a caloric deficit to improve your fasted insulin. And is that true? Yes, but it's going to happen slower than if you were to just reduce your complex and sugary form carbohydrates out of your diet, replace those with vegetables, and then have the understanding and the awareness of implementing higher carbohydrates later on down the road. All right, so what exactly is a ketogenic diet? I know a lot of you probably are already aware of what a ketogenic diet is, but for specifics, I want to give all of the viewers a very clear example of what a ketogenic diet is and the way that you should be eating based off of these parameters so that you can make yourself more insulin sensitive and finally regain control over your health. All right, so starting off with fat. A medical ketogenic diet is considered to be 65 to 85% fat, 15 to 35% of your daily diet should come from protein, and then 5 to 15% of your daily diet should come from carbohydrate. Now, that is going to be predicated on how many calories you are trying to establish your starting point to be at. So as an example, if you were to say, all right, I know that I maintain body weight around 2,000 calories. I'm going to establish a caloric deficit. I'm going to start my calories off at 1,600 per day. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ranges that William recommended in his video, which is 65 to 85% fat, 15 to 35% protein, and then 5 to 15% carbohydrate. And I'm going to eat that every single day over the course of a week. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my fasted blood sugar on day 1. I'm going to check my fasted blood sugar again on day 7, and I'm going to see if I improved. Now, if you are somebody who right now is insulin resistant, I can guarantee you within that first week, you're most likely going to improve. Not to mention, you're most likely going to feel like you have more mental clarity. You're probably going to feel like you actually have more energy because now your body's actually utilizing the nutrients that you're feeding it instead of constantly being resistant. All right, so some of the benefits in regards to a ketogenic diet are going to be improved cognitive function, okay? Weight loss, improved hunger signaling. So a lot of people who do ketogenic diets, they actually report not being very hungry. Now, what I'd say is if you are hungry, I'd probably just increase your calories a bit because again, it's not necessarily that, you have to be in a caloric deficit. It's honestly just the fact that you need to be able to do enough physical activity to burn the glucose off that's overflowing out of your cups so that you can ultimately get to a place where now your body's receptive and kind of waiting for glucose to come in and you can utilize that as fuel. So as a gift to you guys, I went ahead and I found some awesome research that you guys can go ahead and take a look at, and I'm going to post that down below in the description of the video. So I have, I think, 3 different research studies, and then I also found some information from Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who's actually the leading ketogenic researcher over at the University of South Florida. And I actually want to read you guys exactly what I got from Dr. Dominic D'Agostino's website. And it says, because a ketogenic diet reduces carbohydrate intake, it typically results in decreased insulin levels and an overall suppression of insulin signaling. Consequently, this accelerates fat mobilization and fat burning processes in the body and can help prevent or reverse negative effects of insulin resistance. All right, perfectly said there. Can't agree with that enough. And again, the proof's in the pudding, guys. Like, I've experimented with this myself. I actually got, helped my mom basically go from being a type 2 insulin diabetic to not being diabetic at all, not needing any kind of medications. And the interesting thing there is that, even when she was no longer a type 2 insulin diabetic, her physician was still trying to prescribe something to her. So again, I want to wrap this video up, and I just want to say that food is medicine. A lot of the issues that we see today, walking outside and I see somebody who's overweight, granted there are a lot of specifics that play a role with each individual, but a lot of the things that we are seeing in our society today with overweight individuals, obese individuals, can be fixed simply by doing a few things. One of them, physical activity. The other one, avoiding carbohydrates until you have improved your health. Once you've improved your health, go ahead and re-implement carbohydrates. But keep in mind that what's actually happening throughout that process is you're realizing that you do not need an endless amount of carbohydrates to be able to feel really good. The second thing is that you're realizing you need physical activity to be able to burn through the glucose that you're eating. Now, if you do those 2 things, you're going to shift your identity, you're going to shift your habits into those of being a healthy person. And I cannot reiterate enough how important I feel like that is. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Again, my name is William Grazione, the owner of Metabolic Evolution, where we hope to bring you guys the latest evidence-based information to help you finally be able to master your metabolism. God bless you all. I hope you found this video helpful. If I can answer your questions, please leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video.